Mission Impossible Rogue Nation is written and directed by Christopher McQuarrie, who's best known for working with Bryan Singer, as he won an Oscar for writing The Usual Suspects. McQuarrie actually did a rewrite of the previous Mission Impossible film Ghost Protocol, and it was through him working with Tom Cruise on Jack Reacher and Edge of Tomorrow that Cruise offered McQuarrie the opportunity to direct the next Mission Impossible film, which I think it's safe to say that things worked out pretty well, considering McQuarrie will be the only director to return for another entry in the series with Fallout. Rogue Nation is currently my favourite entry in the series. I do believe that aside from Mission Impossible 2, this franchise has gotten better with each film, and I think it's because when I first saw Rogue Nation in theaters, it had been a little while since Ghost Protocol had come out, and I had some lowered expectations about the franchise, but I was completely aware of the film, especially with how much press there was about Tom Cruise hanging out of a plane, and I just remember being so pleasantly caught off guard and surprised, because I was like, oh yeah, number 5, surely they're running out of steam with the franchise. But no, the movie in my opinion ended up being the best one yet, and I was so entertained by it. If you hadn't been convinced up to this point that A, Tom Cruise is an absolute madman, and B, he's one of the greatest living action stars around, then I think Rogue Nation had to be the film to convince you. Because it's not just Tom Cruise doing one death-defying stunt in the movie, it's a number of death-defying stunts across 2 hours that are primarily kept in camera with limited focus on CGI, save for the big diving sequence in Casablanca, which obviously couldn't have been achieved without the use of CGI. But I think why I enjoyed Rogue Nation more than Ghost Protocol is that there is such a big conscious effort to have such a huge variety of different action set pieces, all with different visual styles and choices, that each time just make you feel like you're getting something brand new. The action in Ghost Protocol gelled more into one for me, even though the action in that film is still incredibly impressive. They just cranked up what you were going to see in the sequel. Chris McQuarrie actively wanted to make this film a sort of a greatest hits compilation of the franchise, and I think for fans they're getting everything that they want, from extreme action to lots of Easter eggs and references to the other movies. This movie best represents the series maturing and evolving over time, where things this time are a little more complicated with Ethan, who is trying to reveal the existence of this underground organization known as the Syndicate. Characters operate in more of a grey space in this film, where you have a character like Ilsa Faust, played by Rebecca Ferguson, having to operate for both parties in the film. Ethan's teammates are really questioning his sanity in this film, and whether he is finally taking things too far, as people believe that the Syndicate is just a figment of his imagination, but we obviously know that it isn't, while at the same time pushing himself to absolute extremes physically just to get the job done. First you've got Ethan hanging off the side of a plane, which I think is still my favourite opening of all the Mission Impossible films, which McQuarrie has said is inspired by the cargo plane sequence in Uncharted 3. I mean, what better way to get amped up for a Mission Impossible film? No one's dying or getting tortured here. You're seeing Ethan Hunt do what he does best in all of his glory, with of course the help of his team Brant, Benji and Luther. This movie keeps the team dynamic strong, with more or less everyone returning from Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Jeremy Renner, Simon Pegg and obviously Ving Rhames have become staples of the entire franchise, and they've been solidified as such with this trilogy of movies that we're currently in, continuing with Fallout. All of them just add different dynamics to the team, and really do respond to different sides of Ethan's character. Benji gets to be the jovial, fun side where Ethan is more lighthearted, while Brant is the more serious, slightly cynical side that questions the mission, while Luther is the legacy and history of Ethan's character, having been in all the movies. Ethan almost gets outdone in this film though, by coming across who is essentially the female British version of Ethan Hunt, in Ilsa Faust. She keeps up with him and saves his ass during the diving sequence. She has to stay in favour to the movie's villain Solomon Lane, played by Sean Harris, a character that we'll see continue over into Mission Impossible Fallout. At the same time, she's trying to be an ally to Ethan, because she is British intelligence working undercover. Ilsa Faust is a great revelation to the Mission Impossible franchise, because we haven't really seen anyone beat Ethan's equal, and she acts as a great counterpoint to him. My favourite scene between them is actually towards the end of the film, when they give a respectful hug to each other. I was very glad that she wasn't made a love interest. We know Ethan's wife is still out there, and this movie smartly assumes that we know she's out there somewhere, but Ethan and Ilsa can just be great work partners without forcing any awkward romance, and I think that's a huge plus for this film. Our villain, just like in Ghost Protocol, is fairly one note. Sean Harris does a fine job playing Solomon, but he's the guy lurking in the shadows, the big mastermind who, and of course this is a spoiler review so spoiler alert, is working hand in hand with a rogue MI6 agent, Ilsa's boss. Solomon wants money to keep the Syndicate funded and running undetected, and they do that by dismantling the IMF, by manipulating poor Alec Baldwin. We don't get to learn much else about Solomon, but all the Mission Impossible villains have kind of been mostly single-minded in achieving their goal, and they exist more as plot devices to drive Ethan and his crew, and just act as an obstacle for them to overcome. I do want to say, I really do love the whole opera sequence and the massive Casablanca car chase. Both sequences are so wonderfully staged and edited together, while also being very unique and visually different, where they both offer their own flavour and end up being incredibly memorable. So major props to the crew crew and McQuarrie for being able to orchestrate such wonderful set pieces, which goes back to my point of the action being wonderfully spread out and varied. Yes, the third act still feels a little dragged out with yet another timer being used to amp up the tension, but for me it works. I feel relieved when Benji's bomb is disarmed and Ethan can finally team up with Ilsa, and the way Solomon is caught is still super satisfying. Joe Kramer comes on board to do the score for this film, and I have to say, I think it is my favorite score of all the Mission Impossible films. As intended, it just feels like a big celebration of Mission Impossible, and they're just going for the greatest hits. The themes are the way you love them, and it all comes together in a way that makes you realize why you love this franchise. It's the intrigue, the action, the theme song, all of it is here to celebrate the franchise. So as someone who enjoys this franchise and is a fan, that's why Rogue Nation is my favorite so far. Even if Ghost Protocol is more of a complete standalone film, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation is a great spy action film that really solidified Mission Impossible as one of the all-time great action franchises. This movie gave us everything we could have wanted from a Mission Impossible film, and handles the more complex storytelling far better than any of the previous films. As long as Tom Cruise is around and willing to keep pushing the bar with these films, I'm going to keep showing up to watch them. Mission Impossible Rogue Nation gets a 9 out of 10 from me. Guys, I hope you like this review. If you want to see more reviews just like this one, stay right here for your Monofix. Bye guys.